Hey friends! So a few days ago I posted on Twitter a really old video of me breakdancing. Now a few notes about this. One, I've turned off the audio because I don't want to get slammed by YouTube for copyright violation for my 19 seconds of music that was in the background of this video. Secondarily, don't breakdance on grass. That's terrible. It's hard on the muscles. Injure yourself. Not an ideal surface. In this case, I was a camp counselor at a summer camp where I was actually a lead instructor as well for, I think, about 80 middle school kids related to game development. So my first paid teaching experience. And anyway, some things about this breakdancing. For one, most of my breakdancing was earlier in life. I did a lot in high school, did it in early college. By this point, I was 7 or 8 years out of practice, not in good shape. So all these obviously softening disclaimers. But a few things about that actually relate directly to game development and what I do for a living and some other things. So let's share what those are and how they fit into the bigger picture. Partly because I think sometimes someone sees that and they're like, what the heck? What is he doing? A couple things. One, part of what I enjoyed about breakdancing was that it was something that broke the sort of stereotype around what someone who was a computer programmer did, in this way that it felt like I was helping me fight against being pigeonholed as computer programmers. We make certain assumptions about them, and I always kind of liked trying to kind of challenge that, trying to be different than the stereotypes and the assumptions people make about people who program computers and that kind of thing. So that was one thing I liked about it. Another thing about breakdancing is that it actually borrows from a lot of other types of human movement. It borrows from gymnastics, borrows from various forms of dance, borrows from many different kind of corners of culture, and sort of mashes them together. And that, of course, is a lot of what happens in game design as well. Game development, partly because it's a less historied field, maybe, than literature, than film, than music, than so many other sort of more isolated disciplines. Games very copiously have borrowed themes, concepts, pieces, bits, and parts from other mediums and brought them together in new and different ways. And I think that's part of what I liked about breakdancing activity. It's one of the things that's great about game development is the way in which our form really does borrow, adapt, and blend together so many bits and pieces of other things that we enjoy, other things in our lives, other things we've experienced, other things we've culturally shared. Part of what games are great at is weaving together, borrowing, and adapting, all kind of, half haphazardly, half by clear intention, achieving new effects that way. And then just two last things about the breakdancing. One, it was a chance where I liked that it was something where I practiced in private for the performance in public, right? And granted, this is how so many things in life are, but I think it was particularly helpful in a way that by the time we see something happening in a public space, it's something which the result of it is a product of what happens in private, right? Or at least without a crowd. So when people practice sports, when people practice an instrument, when people practice singing, when people practice whatever it is, that's where we hone the skill. And what I realized was that part of what impressed people about doing that in whatever setting, at parties, at just sort of little events where appropriate, was that it was something that people recognized that's someone who practices. That's someone who applies themselves to better themselves. That's someone who invests time and energy to develop skills in a different way than other people are doing. And even if the skill wasn't super impactful to my professional networking, to my ever getting a customer or client or a collaborator or whatever, in that way, I think it was useful as a signal that here's someone who has committed themselves to practice in a way that I felt was rewarding, but I could feel pride from doing it. It was because I was sort of getting reward from that practice, from that time put in. And then lastly, the one other piece of it was that it got me used to being in front of others as a center of attention. And part of the thing about breakdancing is that occasionally you slip, you fall, something happens that's not the way you intended to do. Something kind of crashes, you lose some momentum, whatever. And it becomes about, okay, how do I just keep this going? How do I kind of constructively build off that momentum? I used to kind of joke with people there was actually a different summer camp I was working with, that like, as long as if you mess up, but then you mess up 2 or 3 times in a row exactly the same way, well, now it looks deliberate. Right now it looks like it was part of a plan, and it doesn't distract everyone so much. Maybe people will even laugh about it, but it's something you can kind of embrace and lean into, and it gets you over, there's just sort of this courage hurdle that people have about public speaking, that people have about being the center of attention, that people have about running a meeting or whatever. That it was, for me, another vehicle for trying to get over that. Which, I'm not saying everybody should do breakdancing, I'm not saying it's the right fit for everybody, but I will say that it is a skill which that particular element of it has been critically helpful for me in starting and running college groups, in running businesses that I do, in orchestrating and being at conferences and being comfortable kind of orchestrating a whole group and then going somewhere, that I early on in life got over that barrier of like, people are listening to me talk, or people are watching me, or I'm the center of attention. What if I mess up? And instead figure out some strategies for like accepting I'm going to mess up. There's going to be mistakes, but how do we adaptively roll with it? How do we get over it? How do we get over ourselves? How do we stop feeling like everything has to be perfect and just have fun? So anyway, that's it for the day. I just wanted to share that as a little bit of my past, kind of for fun. But again, I think there's some useful tidbits in there of if you're not getting it in your life from breakdancing per se, there's lots of other areas of our lives where we can gain some of these same benefits. Just making sure like, A, do you have some of that going on? B, if not, where can you find it? And that's certainly part of what I like about game development, at least in the way we do it in Gamketo and with our practice groups, is that it tries to create some sort of benefits for people as a practice outlet where they feel like they can be, in moderation, a center of attention as a project lead, in moderation, making some mistakes and finding ways to roll with it and be adaptive, figuring that they can be comfortable, having sort of the eyes on them to not make mistakes, embrace that it's going to happen anyway, make the best of it, roll with it. And that's kind of part of where that attitude comes from in our club, is maybe the background in doing this kind of silly stuff. But anyway, that's it for the day. Thanks for always tuning in. Have another video for tomorrow.